Your Highness, thank you so much for joining us today. I think this is the most hotly anticipated session of the day. I wondered if you could talk about, your vision as Minister of Energy in the Kingdom.
First of all, if you may allow me, Halima, I've been emotionally stirred today and yesterday by friends, colleagues, but I guess the climax of it was arriving late at 1 o'clock in the morning, received by my friend Suhail at the airport, taking him away from his family. But only then I realized that I have an extended family here in Abu Dhabi. This is a city and a country that does enable you to feel, have a sense of belonging. The people of the UAE and Abu Dhabi specifically are not only welcoming, but also they give you the true sensation of being part of this city, part of this country. And I'm very grateful for the invitation. And I'm honored to be part of the so-called UAE fabric. Thank you. I've warned you, Halima, she sat with me a few minutes ago to prepare. And unfortunately, I am not that horse or that to be tamed, because fortunately, I'm known for being excessively spontaneous and excessively sometimes cynical. And when I get a joke in my mouth, it just flips out unintendedly, where I may become a bit of an elephant in a room. So I would warn some of the audience here who have had no interaction with me to take it lightly, but it's all done with the so-called festive mode that we're living, we're into today, as we all celebrated the inauguration. To be too candid, I'm so yet emotionally stirred for too many reasons. One, I don't think I have lost a friend. Khalid Al-Faleh, for some of you who did not know, he has been a schoolmate at the university. He and I spent 30 years working together. I was at the ministry, he was at Aramco. We've shared quite a few experiences. We put fights, big fights and small fights, and I had the honor to serve under him as state minister. And I owe it to him, but priority, I owe it to His Majesty, King Salman, Prince Mohammed, that over the last 3 years, they have allowed me to work and do many of the things that I was hoping to do for so many years in the past. So I don't call him that I have lost a friend, because he will always continue to be a friend, and his mark and others, such as Minister Naimi or Minister Nazir, will always be there, and we should always continue to remember them, that they were they are the building, the primary builders of the many stones that the energy industry in Saudi Arabia had evolved to be at today. So I'm still emotionally stirred also by the reception that I've got. Where am I? I'm here to build, and if I can build, I would not destroy. because I have been part of that building process. I told you, Halima, Suhail knows me well now. I am the so-called kitchen or basement man. There was a UK TV series called Downstairs, Upstairs. I belong to the downstairs. I've always liked to work in the kitchen, in the basement. I found myself a good space there. I'm content with the notion of serving my country, my king, and I'm content with the sense of achievement that we all achieve, be it my colleagues in the energy industry in Saudi Arabia, be it my colleagues in OPEC, and now we have a bigger family,
OPEC Plus.
which is OPEC Plus.
Well,
And very soon we will celebrate the charter that will continue putting us together, so until death do us part.
Minister, Your Excellency, could I ask you about the OPEC Plus arrangement? We have a very important joint ministerial monitoring committee meeting taking place in Abu Dhabi this week, and there are a lot of questions about the health of OPEC Plus, about where we are in the rebalancing process, about the work that OPEC still has to do. How do you assess where OPEC is, and how do you assess the partnership with countries like Russia?
Without being, in a way, turning a negative evaluation to the previous attempts, but this time around is different. Different in quality, different in size, and different in the sense of perpetuality. In the many attempts that we've done, which were successful, but they were temporary in nature. They were there to attend to a specific issue, a specific time. When that issue is attended to, and over time, things goes back to where they were before. And only at times of crisis, either way, by the way, either a dooms situation, lack of demand, this and that, people forget that producers also, out of sheer responsibility, do attend to periods of shortages, either driven by unexpected growth of demand, or even as a result of some sort of supply crisis caused by many factors. It could be hurricanes, it could be wars, it could be lack of investment as a result of lower prices for a long period of time. In 98, I was visiting with friends in the US, and I still believe that I still have a record of a discussion we had, and I told those friends of mine that lower oil prices is the very recipe for higher oil prices. Turn out that I was correct. I only bring it because I was correct, nothing more. But in reality, that's the nature of the industry. I think the maturity that we got into as a producers got us into OPEC Plus. The maturity that we got with our other party, the consumer, got us to create the IEF. The International Energy Charter is also another pillar for a meaningful way, or a meaningful discussion, and a meaningful platform for the producers and consumers, not only to interact, but also to find a meaningful way of how they can get together and attend to issues that are relevant to the notion of stability and sustainability. Without which, we will be, each and every one of us will be acting alone. And I think the fundamental lesson that we all learned, be it a producer country or a consumer or even an international oil company or even a state-owned company, this industry has to have the institutions that can give the notion of support towards a noble goal, whereby we will have sustainable and stable energy supplies commensurate with what the world economy requires.
Well, speaking of requirements, how concerned are you about the demand picture, both in the near term because of issues about potential trade wars, and then over the medium term and the long term?
I'm by nature an optimist. I do see on a human basis, as a human, I don't think you can live without being an optimist. Being optimist is the prerequisite for existence, for a human. Be it as it may, with regard to slowing demands, I mean, the jury are out. I was just asked a few minutes ago, I think you heard the question about the IEA projections, and I told the respectable reporter that if I to be concerned with IEA projections, I'll probably be in Prozac all the time. But when it comes to trade wars, well, they're not yet trade wars.
Yes.
They are, I think,
concerns.
The temptation for a trade war. Now, I sometimes, using my cynical mind, which sometimes serves me and sometimes does not, and I ask myself the question, for these respected countries, would they engage in a trade war that bring damage to their economies, to the world economy, and with all the trepidations that it might generate across the board, be it on financial markets, currencies, bond, you name it, growth. I often, elevate my concerns by saying it is definitely impossible to think this way, because at the end of the day, there are respectable people who are managing the institution of these countries concerned, who have the wherewithals, the capability, and the wisdom to see a way through this situation, short of creating another economic crisis.
So you remain an optimist?
I am fundamentally an optimist, and if I am not for a short while, I'll make every effort to create the situation of preserving and maintaining my optimism.
So in our discussions before this session, you talked about your role as a consensus builder. How are you going to bring that to OPEC discussions in terms of how you see your role as leading the kingdom in those discussions?
Very easy. I was privileged twice. I learned consensus building from OPEC, actually. The 32 years of OPEC, it is bound to teach you a good lesson, and a fundamental lesson. Being a small country, a producer, not small in size or in terms of sheer respect, but in terms of small contribution to supply, or being large, actually OPEC decisions are made by consensus. So it's a good compromise, it's a healthy compromise, because it allows participants to have a sense of ownership. And yes, it may take time, it may take effort. Consensus building does take time, and does take effort, and does take a lot of mental energy to try to convince and persuade others for a common path and a common cause. But the beauty of it is that if you have the ability to convince, and you are convinced with what you have, with what you want them to convince. I think if you have that argument, if you have that logic, I think you could be convincing to the others. If you are not, then you should allow the others to convince you of something else. Because otherwise, that sense of ownership would not be amplified. And I cannot think of an alliance of anything, or I cannot even think of anything that you need to attend with a group of even individuals, that they cannot congregate toward a common approach for how they could attend to this, be it OPEC or elsewhere, be it at the G20, at G7, in any forum, in any collaborative work. The notion of consensus building is a prerequisite. The art of being a consensus builder is something that you have to acquire. It's like acquiring a taste of food. You have to taste it, and you have to taste the other side of it. I managed to, luckily, to attend to 4 energy crises. And I know the bitter taste of not being attentive to these crises in the most appropriate way. I also, like many of my colleagues who are in the so-called veteran column, have realized the sweet taste of working collaboratively, and each and every participant play his role and discharge his commitment to the best way that they can do. Because it's also, the other component is trust. You know, when President Reagan engulfed himself into a serious dialogue with the Soviet Union, he did come up with this iconic statement, trust but verify. And that's why we have this committee that is meeting in a couple of days, where I think the notion of it is trust but verify.
So, Your Highness, I know you've been getting this question, for the past 24 hours, but could you once again sort of address the issue of, are there expectations or any expectations of any dramatic shift in Saudi's production policy since you've become minister?
It depends on how dramatic the market will be.
Okay, that's yes.
But I was telling our friends at the media that I'm not here to preempt the meeting that will be held 2 days ago from now. I just a while ago I said that I respect consensus, and maybe because we are the biggest exporter, that makes it even incumbent on us to stress the importance of everybody. Because again, if you are after the minuscule sort of increment, then you should bear into mind that being big or small, they are all the same. It's all about the incremental contributions that can make a deal work and work better, or may work but in a less optimal way.
Now, turning our attention to another really big issue, the IPO of Saudi Aramco. Can you talk us through what some of the recent changes, or what's the outlook in the relationship going forward between your ministry and Saudi Aramco will be?
Well, I had the honor and pleasure of working with Saudi Aramco personnel, the company and the personnel. There is nothing in my capacity in the ministry that I could not do to protect the interests of this state-owned company. I think the best thing that we have done in Saudi Arabia was to ensure the commerciality of the company and the so-called arm's length relationship between the company as a company owned by the state and enabling the company to work as nothing more than any other international company. The IPO really made us all focus on even exerting and accelerating every possible effort to highlight this and to magnify this and to recheck what we have been doing in the past and how can we emphasize and improve that model. Because that model saved us and rescued us in terms of our economic well-being and in terms of, not only in terms of producing oil or gas, but also Aramco now is a producer of new technologies and reaching out to the world in the most competitive way. Therefore, it is incumbent on the ministry to ensure that Aramco role to be attended to in the future is not only maintained, but enhanced, improved, and supported. The change we have underwent recently, as I said, I had the honor of working with a team, a capable team of both the ministry, Aramco, the various advisors, been overseen by a Supreme Committee headed by His Highness Prince Mohammed. We have successfully put together a hydrocarbon law. We have successfully put together a new concession with Aramco. We had successfully put together the new bylaws for Aramco. There is nothing that I could take an example to as a testament of how successful we were, but referring to the last bond issuance that Aramco had made. I don't think that it was even conceivable by myself that when Aramco put together a 10 billion bond issuance, that they will have 120 some billion of willing partners, subscribers to that. That day was one of the best days of my life because I knew that the work of myself and the team and everybody, and including that committee that oversee the work, did not go in vain. It was also a testament to the strength, the support, and the belief of in Saudi Arabia, in the Saudi economy, and also in the company that the Saudi government had created. And I have no doubt in my mind that emphasizing the separation between Aramco, the corporate, and the ministry as the regulator is a must. I must confess that I had this quarreling question about which is more important, the institution that works as a regulator or the embodiment of the institution in the presence of the Minister of Energy as the chairman of the board. In my humble personal experience, I would choose the first, not the latter, because the regulator cannot be a person. The regulator has to be an institution. And that regulator role has to be defined. And the contours of the role of the regulator has to be understood. And the beauty of the arrangement we have done, being so sensitive about Saudi Aramco, actually, in the hydrocarbon law, you will see when it is published that no other agency, government agency, will be able to reach out to Aramco but through the Energy Ministry.
Your Highness, I want to bring up another topic that you are really known for, and that's your work on domestic energy reform. Many of us who were starting to become new about learning about the kingdom, there was a report that was produced in 2011. We talked about it, the Chatham House report that was titled Burning Oil to Keep Cool, a controversial report that said that Saudi's domestic demand was unsustainable and that potentially the kingdom could be a net importer since 2038. I was wondering, where does the kingdom stand on the domestic energy reform agenda? It's something that you are known for championing, tremendous success in reducing energy usage, but I thought I would give the floor to you to talk to where we stand on this program.
Well, here comes Johnny, my cynical mind comes out. I think this report was probably issued just after New Year's Eve, because I don't know where is Paul. Is he around, Paul Stephen? There is an Arabic say, which is very eloquent. I don't know how I can translate it in English, but it says, أصفه بترك الوصف. I attribute it through no attribution. Yeah. But I'm not going to waste my time and take time of the respectable audience of a la-la land scenario of Saudi Arabia being a net importer of energy by 2038. What do I know for a fact, and we have the statistics to show, that our energy intensity had been reduced, actually by 8%. Right. That with our new and improved energy mix that we will be achieving hopefully by 2030, thanks to Vision 2030, that we will, through the energy mix, through efficiency, through price reform, actually, conservatively, our energy consumption on a million barrel equivalent will be reduced by no less than 1.5 million barrels compared to what it was projected to. If you look at what we have done in terms of even the best part that happened also 3 years ago, that we're no longer oil ministry, we are an energy ministry. So within the energy ministry domain, you have everything that has to do with energy, electricity, renewable, nuclear, oil, gas, price reform, efficiency. We even have a wonderful program. I just want to, by the way, we're so proud with what we are doing. We have at 4:15 today at, I think somebody made an announcement, I think somewhere upstairs, room 7, Ahmed? Huh? Suite 7 upstairs. We have a workshop, first in, first served. It's a 2.5 hours workshop that will start there today. And then at our exhibition, we have like a mini auditorium, which we will repeat that workshop twice a day. I have the honor and the pleasure of bringing the best and brightest of everybody that works in energy in Saudi Arabia to be present in these auditoriums, explaining our new and improved energy mix system. And I really would like to invite you all, if you can, come and see it yourselves. Because not only we are proud of it, we're bringing solutions. We're even talking about a more sustainable use of energy. We're mindful of the environment. We're doing, as our friends from the UAE are doing, we're doing lots of things on carbon capturing. We're doing a lot of things about renewable. We're doing a lot about ethane emissions. We're deploying lots of technologies. There is one other program which is, I've been told by the team that is putting together, don't you ever mention it, people take it away from us. So we coined it with a different name, but it has to do with not only actually meeting the challenge of potential if it may happen, a reduction of demand, what we are going to do. We cannot sit on those hydrocarbon resources that we have. We'll have to find uses for it. I have with me a team of material engineers that are working in this program, in Aramco, in Sabic, in many places in Saudi Arabia. Proud that I see them being Saudis. They're working in these endeavors. And I think once we receive our marching order, I think we will dazzle the world with that program.
Can I ask you, just following on from that, like, what's the role of nuclear in the mix, and where are you in terms of the program?
Well, we're proceeding with it cautiously, and this is something new.
Yeah.
I often describe Saudi Arabia as well as Aramco as a big ULCC. It takes a while for it to move, but when it moves, it moves. So our approach with nuclear is to experiment with 2 nuclear reactors. It just so happened that we are fortunate enough that we have a lot of uranium resource. People argue about 5–7% of the world uranium resource, but we have it. And we want to make sure that even if we scale up to the notion that we want to go for the full cycle, from producing uranium, enriching uranium, using uranium, even acquiring the technologies, and progressively improve, even going through. And because of the span of Saudi Arabia, we are also interested in small nuclear plants, because it would probably serve us well in remote areas and what have you. So we are interested in also making sure that our energy mix is comprehensive, because our starting point for our energy mix, we're saying the juries are out, be it nuclear, be it renewable, be it wind. And I have a complete department headed by a deputy. Their day and night work is nothing more than looking at our energy mix. The first thing Dr. Naif Msahel is here, I told him, is that every morning look at those numbers and make sure that your economics are correct, and continue to adapt to what comes in terms of new technologies and how you could alternate that energy mix, taking into account the diversity that are technologies that are coming out, and how much we can make use of it to make our own energy mix or energy system more effective, more efficient, and more efficient in terms of cost, efficient in terms of the use of energy, but also efficient in terms of making sure that this system is commensurate with our future obligation and commitments toward sustainable development.
Your Highness, our session is drawing to a close, but if I could just ask one final question. You have more than 30 years of experience in this industry. There's so many people that you have played a profound role in teaching them about this industry. You've essentially been the professor for so many of us. You say you're an optimist, so what one thing gives you the most cause for optimism? And we're going to go against your nature, but what is the one thing that gives you the greatest concern?
By design, I'm not a defeatist. You know, I don't crawl in my bed wondering and mourning about my life and what have you. I wake up in the morning challenged, and I try to attend to the challenge. The very reason that this happens to me every morning is I like what I do.
Yeah.
Maybe we have some young audience. And I'll give you one simple advice. Never go to a job that you don't like it and you don't like to be part of that ecosystem. The only thing that saves you and energizes you is wanting to be in that industry. I must say, and for those who know me, I think they will probably believe me. I've never built my career on the notion of wanting to be a minister of energy. I built my life on the notion of wanting to be in this industry because I like to be there. I like to wake up in the morning challenged. I like to challenge the people that work with me. I like to be challenged with the people that work with me in Athens. Why? Because I know energy, I like energy, and I want to be part of that energy because I get to be energized in working in that sector.
Prince Abdulaziz, we congratulate you on the appointment. We wish you well, and thank you for all of your service. Thank you.
Honored to be here.
Thank you.